President Obama released a statement on Saturday where he basically begged Congress to reauthorize certain NSA programs, and he made some curious arguments.
As President and Commander-in-Chief, my greatest responsibility is the safety of the American people. And in our fight against terrorists, we need to use every effective tool at our disposal, both to defend our security and to protect the freedoms and civil liberties enshrined in our Constitution. But tomorrow, Sunday at midnight, some important tools we use against terrorists will expire. That's because Congress has not renewed them, and because legislation that would, the USA Freedom Act, is stuck in the Senate. I want to be very clear about what this means. Today, when investigating terrorist networks, our national security professionals can seek a court order to obtain certain business records. Our law enforcement professionals can seek a roving wiretap to keep up with terrorists when they switch cell phones. We can seek a wiretap on so-called lone wolves, suspected terrorists who may not be directly tied to a terrorist group. These tools are not controversial. Since 9/11, they've been renewed numerous times. FBI Director James Comey says they are essential and that losing them would severely impact terrorism investigations. But if Congress doesn't act by midnight tomorrow, these tools go away. So what's the problem? A small group of senators is standing in the way. And unfortunately, some folks are trying to use this debate to score political points. But this shouldn't and can't be about politics. This is a matter of national security. Terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIL aren't suddenly going to stop plotting against us at midnight tomorrow. And we shouldn't surrender the tools that help keep us safe.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Straw man central, son. So you're accusing the senators who are blocking this of essentially being on the side of Al-Qaeda. You know, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they're not going to stop tomorrow. I mean, that's why we need these programs. But that presupposes that these programs are effective in combating ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and they are empirically not. In fact, all you have to do is pose the question to anybody in the NSA, anybody in the FBI, anybody in the Obama administration. Hey, could you guys give me just one example of any time that these NSA programs and the Patriot Act programs prevented a terrorist attack? You know what you'd hear? Crickets. Fucking crickets. And we know that's the case because some investigative journalists have looked into it, and that's the conclusion they've reached. Because originally the NSA was lying, and they said, yeah, you know, we stopped like 54 different cases of terrorism. Yes, we did. Please. Now, you and I both know they would have bragged immediately the second those happened, if that actually happened. But they didn't do that. They would have leaked everything to the press and been like, see, we stopped terrorism, we stopped terrorism. So when they looked into it, that number was whittled down to like 12 examples. Then those 12 were whittled down to 0 because they found that any that were actually prevented were prevented through different means. They were not prevented through the NSA. And by the way, if the NSA spying is so effective, 2 words for you. Boston Marathon. What, were they all on fucking coffee break and they couldn't find the people who planted a bomb there and were planning this for a while? Really? So don't give me this bullshit. You cannot give me this bullshit. Oh, yeah, yes, it works. It prevents terrorist attacks. Well, you presented no evidence of that whatsoever, but we have a mountain of evidence that it's being abused. We have NSA officials spying on their love interests. It's so common. It's so popular. There's a fucking name for it when they do it. They call it love int. Short for love intelligence. In other words, I'm gathering information on my ex and being a creepy asshole over here in an illegal and unconstitutional fashion. But everybody's so cool with it, when they do it, it has a fucking name for it. So don't tell me that, this is so important. If you're against Al-Qaeda, you're for these programs. That's the cheapest argument I could ever imagine. Because what you're doing is you're trying to make it a non-debatable issue. Like, oh, you disagree with me? I guess you like Al-Qaeda. No, we don't. But here's what we do love. Civil liberties. Call us crazy. Now, make no mistake about it. He's referring to Section 215 of the Patriot Act. It expired, and that's the provision that allows them to do bulk collection. Now, what's funny about that is that's even not necessarily true, because Representative Sensenbrenner, who wrote the Patriot Act, has said repeatedly, I wrote Section 215. It's not for this. You're interpreting it as for that, but it's not for that. In fact, there was a debate immediately following 9/11, right after the passage of the Patriot Act, where courts were unsure if Section 215 could be used to look through library records. That was a debate back then. Now they're like, library records? We collect that on a Tuesday before brunch, bitch. Are you kidding me? We've graduated to emails and text messages and every phone call you've ever made and all of your personal information. Anything you've ever done online is saved under that program, and we use that section 215 as a justification for that, even though that's not what it's for. In fact, all this technology didn't even exist back then when Section 215 was passed. So you're telling me Section 215 allows for this kind of activity? For programs that were created after it was written? That doesn't make any sense. That's like saying, the founding fathers are in favor of nuclear armament. Nukes didn't exist back then. How the fuck do you know? So it makes absolutely no sense. And when he refers to a court order there, he's saying, all the people who are against this, they don't understand. We have a process in place, and you need to go to a court to get approval to look through this stuff. Not true. What he's referring to is the FISA court. The FISA court are the special courts that were set up specifically for this purpose. The problem with them is that they're nothing but a rubber stamp. They approve of everything. It's not a true independent judiciary that's looking at evidence and saying, okay, you could spy on that person. It's just somebody who's put there to say, in every case, spy on whoever the fuck you want for whatever reason you want. So it's a bullshit process that has been set up. The old process worked just fine. The old process being the constitutional process where you actually get a warrant. Now, enough of me doing a rebuttal to Obama here, because I have a good rebuttal from a guy here that I used to know well.
When national security letters are issued, they allow federal agents to conduct any search on any American, no matter how extensive, how wide-ranging, without ever going before a judge to prove that the search is necessary. All that is needed is a sign-off from a local FBI agent. That's it. Once a business or a person receives notification that they will be searched, they are prohibited from telling anyone about it. And they're even prohibited from challenging this automatic gag order in court. And if someone wants to know why their own government has decided to go on a fishing expedition through every personal record or private document, through the library books that you read, the phone calls that you've made, the emails that you've sent, this legislation gives people no rights to appeal the need for such a search in a court of law. No judge will hear your plea. No jury will hear your case. This is just plain wrong. And there are Republican senators as well as Democratic senators that recognize that it's plain wrong. Giving law enforcement the tools they need to investigate suspicious activities is one thing, and it's the right thing. But doing it without any real oversight seriously jeopardizes the rights of all Americans and the ideals America stands for.
What happened to that guy?